On the edge of the coastal wilderness, where the Pacific tides met the shadow of ancient trees, Grace Morgan arrived with no plans of being found. At 62, she wasn't running from something, but she was most certainly walking away. Away from the noise, away from the world, away from the pain that clung to her like salt on skin. They say you can't outrun the past. Grace didn't believe that at first. Not until the past sent something to find her. Something with 4 legs, torn fur, and a secret wrapped in a canvas bag. It was a fog-laced morning, the kind that made the ocean disappear into the sky. A hush settled over the land, muffling even the cries of gulls. Sea breeze wove through pine and sorrow, as if the cliffs themselves were exhaling. Grace was standing on the porch of her weathered cottage, mug in hand, wrapped in an old wool cardigan that had once belonged to her son. The cabin groaned faintly under the weight of time and salt. It was quiet. It was hers. She'd chosen this spot at the very edge of Oregon's coastal forest for its silence. Not just the absence of people, but the kind of silence that settled into your bones and pressed against your thoughts like a weighted blanket. The kind of silence that either healed you or hollowed you out. That morning, Grace had planned to do nothing. Maybe feed the gulls. Maybe reread one of her old paperbacks from the bookshelf above the wood stove. She lit the stove, put on some oatmeal, and stood by the window, watching the fog inch across the dunes. Then she heard it. A dragging sound. Not the wind. Not the branches creaking. Something heavier. Something alive. She stepped outside, barefoot, mug still warm in her hands. The fog clung to her eyelashes as she squinted toward the sound. And then out of the gray mist came a shape, a stagger, a silhouette, a dog. But not just any dog. It limped, slow, deliberate. The outline of a German shepherd began to emerge from the veil. Her coat, once thick and noble, was now tattered and matted with seaweed and blood. One ear was half torn. Her gait was labored, but she held her head high, and from her jaw, clutched like treasure, hung a canvas satchel, dragging a deep trail in the sand. Grace froze. Her instincts fired. Not fear, but something older. Nurse reflex. Soldier's mother reflex. Her pulse slowed even as her body stepped forward. The dog reached the edge of the porch. Their eyes met. Grace saw it then, the pain, the fatigue, but also something else. Not desperation. Not wildness. Purpose. The dog dropped the satchel and whimpered. It was a low, almost human sound. And when Grace opened the bag, her breath caught in her chest. Inside, swaddled in a worn towel and barely breathing, was a newborn German shepherd puppy, no more than days old. Its fur was wet and patchy, its ribs protruding like fragile sticks under loose skin. It made a faint sound, half gasp, half cry, and then stilled. Grace's knees hit the ground before she knew they were folding. "Oh my God!" she whispered, reaching in with trembling hands. The older dog, silent sentinel, watched her carefully but did not growl, did not flinch. She simply lay down beside Grace, resting her chin on the wood plank, her breathing shallow but steady. Grace scooped the puppy into the hem of her sweater. Its warmth barely registered. She held it close to her chest, whispering softly, words from a place long locked away. "It's okay. I've got you now." The older dog, without invitation, rose and limped through the open door. Grace followed, puppy in arms. She didn't stop to question. She just moved, like the tide, instinct pulling her forward. Inside, the stove glowed faintly. The cottage smelled of cedar and old paper. Grace placed the puppy in a shallow wooden bowl lined with fleece and knelt beside it. The dog collapsed near the hearth, letting out a deep, ragged sigh. "We'll call you Flint," she whispered to the puppy, brushing a finger over its tiny, damp nose. "You're small, but you've got spark." She turned to the older dog. "And you?" Her voice broke. "You're a soldier, aren't you?" The dog didn't answer, of course, but her gaze never wavered. There was dignity in her silence, a kind of solemnity that Grace recognized, the kind only survivors carry. The cottage itself was a small haven against the elements. Built from gray, weathered wood, its beams groaned with every gust, but it stood strong. It had to. Grace had chosen it for that reason. She had come here to disappear. A former trauma nurse, she had spent 2 decades patching up the world's broken places, only to lose the one person she couldn't save. Her son, Thomas, a medic like her, had died in a roadside blast 2 years before. His death had fractured something inside her, and no amount of tending or treatment could heal it. So she'd left her job, her house, her friends. She packed only what she needed and drove north until the roads narrowed and the trees thickened and the ocean roared louder than her thoughts. She hung her son's uniform in the bedroom closet. She placed his photograph, one of him smiling in desert fatigues, above the fireplace, and she whispered to it each night. Not prayers, just memories, just longing. And now this dog had arrived, like a ghost sent with purpose, like a message from something beyond grief. The puppy stirred in the bowl, his breathing shallow yet rhythmic. Grace sat on the floor beside the stove, the warmth beginning to thaw something in her chest. She reached out and stroked the mother dog's paw. "You're safe here," she murmured. "Both of you are." And for the first time in months, Grace did not feel entirely alone. She didn't know what the next day would bring, but she knew, as she looked into the eyes of that broken, battered German shepherd, that something had shifted. Maybe this place wasn't the end. Maybe it was the beginning. She knew immediately this was no ordinary stray. Grace Morgan stood still, heart pounding gently in her chest. Not from fear, but from awe. The battered German shepherd before her wasn't just exhausted. She was trained. Her movements, even in pain, were deliberate. Her posture alert. Her eyes, though weary, held calculation. This wasn't a lost dog. This was a soldier. The dog's coat was black and tan, though now caked with salt, blood, and bramble. One ear was torn near the tip, and a faint scar crossed her left shoulder, one that looked more like shrapnel than a thorn. Her ribs showed through her thinning coat, but she carried herself with the quiet command of someone who had once stood tall. As Grace knelt beside her, the dog dropped the canvas satchel at her feet and released a low, guttural whimper. It was the sound of defeat but also trust. Grace reached for the satchel. Inside, wrapped in a threadbare towel, was the puppy. So small, too small, a soft bundle of damp fur, its eyes barely open, belly sunken, legs like reeds. The baby German shepherd's breath came in tiny gasps, each one a battle. Grace's throat tightened as she gently scooped the puppy into her arms. She had held infants like this before, some just born, others fading. On battlefields, in trauma wards, in hospice homes. But this was different. This was a mother delivering her last hope. "Oh, sweetheart," she murmured, wrapping the puppy in her sweater. "You've come so far, haven't you?" The dog made no move to stop her. Instead, she staggered inside after Grace, her frame trembling with every step. She paused near the wood stove, lowered herself slowly to the rug, and exhaled. Grace placed the puppy in a shallow basket lined with flannel and turned to the mother. She crouched slowly, palm outstretched. "You're safe here," she whispered. The dog blinked slowly, as if recognizing something in Grace's voice. That night, Grace didn't sleep. She laid blankets around the stove, feeding the puppy small droplets of warmed formula from a dropper she'd found in an old emergency kit. The dog, watching every move, never protested. If anything, she seemed grateful. As the storm outside whispered against the windows, the fire cracked gently, and the room became something sacred. The beginning of a bond not built in words, but in survival. By morning, the puppy stirred with more strength. His limbs twitched softly, ears flicking. Grace smiled through exhausted eyes and whispered, "We'll call you Flint. You're going to be strong one day, just like her." The mother dog stirred at the name. Her tail thumped once, gently. In the hours that followed, Grace searched the internet using her old satellite-powered laptop. She needed answers about care, nutrition, hydration, but mostly, she needed to understand who this dog was. No tags, no collar, only the scars and the instincts of a creature shaped by discipline. By early afternoon, She had warmed broth for the mother dog, who lapped at it slowly, cautiously, never taking her eyes off Flint. "You're his protector," Grace said, sitting beside her. "You carried him all the way here, but now you don't have to do it alone." She thought for a moment. "Captain," she said aloud, "that feels right for you." The dog lifted her head slightly, eyes meeting Grace's. "Captain," Grace repeated softly, "that's who you are." Later that week, Grace called Dr. Helena, the only vet in the area who made house calls to people like Grace. Reclusive, remote, the kind of folk who didn't like to explain why they'd left everything behind. Dr. Helena arrived with a gentle presence and warm hands. She examined Flint first, nodding approvingly as she checked his temperature. "Still fragile," she said, "but stable. You did good." Then she turned her attention to Captain. As her scanner passed over Captain's shoulder, a beep sounded. Dr. Helena's eyes widened. "She's chipped," she said. "Military issue." A few clicks later, and the truth came to light. Her name was Sabra, the vet read aloud. Retired military K9, assigned to a bomb unit overseas, listed as killed in action 5 years ago, during a base explosion in Kandahar. Grace stared at the screen. She survived. Somehow. "She did," Dr. Helena said softly, "and she's been running ever since." Sabra, a ghost dog, declared gone, but very much alive. Grace looked down at her, at the steady gaze, the scars. She reached forward and placed a hand on the dog's shoulder. "Captain," she whispered again, "your mission didn't end with that blast. It brought you here." The days began to take on rhythm. Grace fed Flint every few hours, holding his tiny body close to her chest. Captain would sit nearby, never far, her body always angled to keep him in view. Sometimes, Grace would find Captain staring into the distance, eyes fixed on the treeline, watching, listening, still in protector mode. She hadn't shed her training, and maybe she never would. One evening, as the fire snapped and a soft rain fell outside, Grace found herself speaking aloud. To Captain, to Flint, to the ghosts of memory. "My son's name was Thomas," she said, sipping her tea. "He was a medic, just like me. We used to laugh about how he wanted to follow in my footsteps. And then one day he did. Right into war." Captain tilted her head slightly. "He didn't come back," Grace continued. "His truck hit an IED. They said it was fast, clean. But those words mean nothing when your heart stops beating with his." She looked at Flint, curled in a tiny ball of fur. Then to Captain. "But you came back, and you brought him, like a promise, like a message I didn't know I was waiting for." That night, Grace didn't cry. She just sat between them, one broken mother and another, and let the warmth of the fire fill the room. By the end of the week, Flint opened his eyes. They were a deep brown, just like his mother's, just like Thomas's. He began to crawl awkwardly on wobbly legs, squeaking in protest whenever Grace lifted him to feed. Captain watched every movement, sometimes nudging him gently back into place when he strayed too far. Grace had never expected to feel responsible for another life again. But somehow, with Flint's tiny heart against hers, and Captain's steady eyes watching over them, she began to feel something she hadn't known in years. Hope. The days that followed were a blur of warmth, worry, and something Grace hadn't dared feel in a long time. Purpose. Each morning began before the sun, as fog crept across the dunes like ghostly fingers. Flint, though fragile, began to grow stronger. His cries, once barely whispers, now arrived with impatient squeaks, especially when Grace was late with the dropper of warm formula. He kicked his legs when held, his body gaining weight. His eyes, now fully open, held a shine that Grace swore wasn't just hunger, but recognition. Captain, too, had shifted. She had moved from collapse to cautious recovery. Though still stiff and slow, she now followed Grace around the cabin with watchful eyes. She'd sit beside Flint during feeding times, then retreat to the back door, laying with her head high and ears angled toward the forest beyond. Always alert, always protecting. Grace had never lived with animals. She'd spent her whole life surrounded by humans, patients, doctors, her son. But now, the rhythm of her days was defined by paws on wood floors, the soft weight of a sleeping puppy on her chest, and the quiet presence of a loyal soul who didn't speak, but somehow understood everything. Still, the question lingered. Where had Captain come from? She didn't arrive as a wanderer. She arrived with a mission. Grace reached out to Dr. Helena again, asking if anything new had come from the scan. A week after the first house call, the vet returned, this time with paperwork, photographs, and something else. The weight of truth. Dr. Helena laid a folder on Grace's kitchen table, the wood scarred from decades of use, just like them. She was called Sabra in service, she began, her voice gentle but precise. Unit K-9-7 Bomb Detection Detail. Served 3 tours overseas. The last report on her file was dated 5 years ago. A base explosion. 2 soldiers killed. Sabra was listed as Kia, presumed buried in the rubble after saving the lives of 2 soldiers who escaped. Grace blinked. But she wasn't buried. No. Somehow, she got out. Helena opened a photo. There she was, Captain, younger, stronger, standing beside a soldier who looked barely older than Grace's Thomas. Her coat glistened in the desert sun, her stance proud, tail lifted in alertness. A warrior, across wilderness, across who knows how much terrain. Not just carried, Helena said. She protected him, with every ounce of herself. Grace's voice trembled. That's what mothers do. That night, as a storm pressed hard against the cabin walls, Grace placed another log on the fire and sat down beside Captain. You were supposed to be gone, she whispered, but you didn't give up. You found a way out of the rubble. And instead of hiding, you found your way back to people. Captain rested her head on Grace's feet. Her breathing was slow, steady, but the toll was showing. Helena had been honest. Captain's body was tired. Internal damage from the blast. Bones healed wrong. Likely chronic pain. She would not last forever. But she had not come to die. She had come to deliver. Over the next few days, something inside Grace began to shift. She started keeping a journal again, the kind she had stopped writing in the day Thomas died. At first, it was just notes on Flint's progress, how much he ate, how long he slept. But soon they became letters. To Thomas, to Captain, even to herself. I thought my purpose ended with your last breath, she wrote one morning, sipping coffee as Flint slept curled on her foot. But you told me to keep my heart open. I didn't listen. Until now. The cabin, once a silent shell, began to feel like a place reborn. The old radio crackled with music again. Grace found herself humming while washing dishes. She let the windows stay open longer, allowing the ocean air to drift through with the scent of pine and salt. And every day, Captain grew more relaxed. Her body still ached, but her eyes softened. She allowed herself to be brushed. She let Grace clean her wounds. And one evening, as the sun burned red over the cliffs, Captain curled beside Grace on the porch, resting her head in her lap. They watched the horizon together in silence. No war stories, no questions, just the comfort of survivors finding one another. But even healing carries its shadows. One night, Flint began to whimper in his sleep. Sharp, panicked cries. Grace jolted awake, heart in her throat. She knelt beside his crate, scooping him into her arms. It's okay, she whispered. You're safe. But Captain was already at the door, rigid, ears forward, growling low. Grace froze. Outside, the wind had stopped. The forest held its breath. Then a snap, a branch. Grace reached for her flashlight and opened the door slowly. The beam flicked across the trees, catching movement. 2 yellow eyes reflecting back at her. Coyote. Maybe more. Captain didn't wait for instruction. With a snarl, she launched herself off the porch and into the darkness. Captain! Grace shouted. The snarls were sharp, echoing. Grace ran after her, flashlight shaking. She saw the glint of teeth, the blur of fur, and then silence. Grace found her near the edge of the tree line, standing over a fallen coyote, breathing hard but upright. The others had scattered. Captain turned toward her, limped forward, and nudged her palm. It wasn't just protection. It was instinct, duty. Grace crouched beside her. "You're still a soldier," she whispered, "but this time you're ours." From that night on, Grace never doubted it. Captain had come not just to deliver her son, but to stand watch until she no longer needed to. She was a guardian, a bridge between worlds. And Flint was the light that would carry them both forward. It was early morning again when the first real sign of change came. The day before, the storm had subsided, leaving a fragile quiet hanging in the air. The fog had lifted, revealing the endless stretch of the Pacific, its surface calm but its depths as unknowable as the future. Grace stood by the window, coffee mug in hand, watching the waves, feeling the familiar pull of the ocean's rhythm. It was the kind of peace she had come to love, a peace that hid its own secrets. But today there was something different, a new energy in the air. The wind felt warmer, less harsh, and as Grace turned to glance back at the fire crackling in the hearth, she found both Flint and Captain watching her from across the room. Flint, growing stronger with every passing day, was stretching his legs now. His coat had started to fill out. There was a spark in his eyes, a hint of mischief that had only recently appeared. But it was Captain who captured Grace's attention. The older dog stood just a few feet away, watching Grace with an intensity that was both patient and fierce. The bond between them was shifting, no longer one of survival alone, but of something deeper, something unspoken. Captain had taken to standing guard over the cottage, even though it wasn't needed anymore. She would position herself at the door, her eyes scanning the trees and the horizon as though she were still waiting for a command, still waiting for a war that no longer existed. Grace knew the scars on Captain's body weren't just from the battlefields in Afghanistan. They were from a lifetime of service, a lifetime of duty, and somewhere within that mission had been reset. The tides had pulled them all here, to this moment, and Grace couldn't help but wonder. Had Captain known all along? Had she always been meant to find them? The thought sent a shiver down Grace's spine. She wasn't just healing herself anymore. She was healing them both. And in the process, they were teaching her how to live again. She had become a mother again, but this time not to a son, to a warrior and a pup, both of whom carried more weight than Grace had ever imagined. It was a few weeks later, after the healing wounds of time had begun to fade, when Captain's next gesture surprised Grace. One night, just after the sun dipped beneath the horizon and the air chilled, Captain stood in front of the cabin, her body tense but still, her ears pricked as if she were listening to a sound no one else could hear. Grace was making dinner, stirring a pot of stew, when she glanced out the kitchen window. There, in the fading twilight, Captain's silhouette stood framed by the tall pines. Grace's heart tightened. She hadn't seen the dog act like this before. Captain's stillness wasn't out of fatigue or injury. It was something else, something more. Grace stepped outside into the cold, feeling the chill of the evening sink into her bones. "Captain?" she called gently, but the dog didn't move. There was a quiet reverence to her posture, her head slightly tilted, and her gaze locked on the forest beyond the cottage. Then, as if summoned by some invisible force, Captain turned her head and fixed her gaze on Grace. Her eyes, always so sharp, always so focused, softened for a moment. She gave a short, low whine, then started walking toward the treeline. Grace watched her go, unsure whether to follow. But something inside told her that Captain was about to reveal more than she ever had before. Without thinking, Grace stepped forward. "I'll come with you," she whispered. It wasn't a question. It wasn't even a choice. Flint, who had grown stronger and bolder by this point, followed too, his tiny legs now sturdy enough to scamper behind them. Grace didn't need to check on him. She knew he was there. The journey wasn't far. Only a few hundred yards beyond the cabin, near the edge of a small grove, Captain stopped. The air was thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, and the distant sound of the ocean seemed like another world entirely. Captain stood by an ancient, gnarled tree, her eyes trained on something just beyond the shadow of its roots. Grace's heart skipped a beat. For a moment, she didn't see it. But then, in the dimming light, her eyes caught the faintest glimmer of a metal tag. It was old, weathered, but unmistakably a collar. Her breath caught in her throat. Captain had led her here, back to where she began, back to the past. The memories of war, of pain, of survival came rushing in as Grace knelt beside the old tree. The collar she found had no name, no numbers, just the faintest engraving. Sabra, K9 unit. She held it in her palm, a cold metal reminder of a past Captain Sabra had carried with her. It wasn't just a piece of military history. It was a piece of herself, buried here beneath the earth. Grace turned to Captain, who was now sitting at her side. Her ears were back, her eyes distant but knowing. She was no longer the soldier on the battlefield. She was something else, a mother, a guide, and now a living testament to the sacrifices made long ago. "I never thought I'd understand it," Grace whispered, her voice raw. "But I do now. You saved him. You saved both of us." She reached out, brushing her fingers against Captain's shoulder. "And now, it's time to let go of the past." The dog's eyes softened once again. For the first time since Grace had found her on the porch, Captain lowered her head in submission, allowing Grace's touch to soothe her. In the weeks that followed, the bond between Grace, Captain, and Flint grew even deeper. Every day was a lesson in resilience, a reminder that life, no matter how broken or lost it seemed, could always find its way back to purpose. Flint had grown, his tiny legs now strong enough to run, and his eyes held the fire of a soldier. He chased the waves along the shore, barking at the seagulls in pure, unbridled joy, while Captain, ever watchful, followed his every step. The puppy had become a part of the fabric of this little world, just as Captain had become a part of Grace's life. One evening, as the sun set over the horizon, Grace stood at the edge of the cliff, Captain and Flint at her side. The ocean stretched out before them, vast and endless. "I think we're finally home," Grace murmured, and for the first time in years, she truly believed it. The morning sun began its quiet ascent, its light gradually flooding the small house. Grace sat by the window, coffee in hand, watching the first hints of gold touch the surface of the ocean. The waves, as constant as the passing of time, lapped at the shore with a soft rhythm that almost seemed to echo the beating of her heart. There was peace here, but it was a fragile peace. One that Grace had fought for, clawed her way toward, after all that had happened. But today something felt different. Something deep inside her stirred, like an old ache she had long ignored. It was the feeling of waiting. She was waiting for something to shift, for something to break free within her. But she wasn't sure what. It had been months since she had come to this place, seeking solace, but now, that same quiet sense of peace that had settled in her soul seemed to be shifting, becoming something else. Her thoughts were interrupted by the familiar sound of paws padding softly across the floor. She turned to see Captain standing at the doorway, his eyes meeting hers, filled with a silent understanding. Behind him, Flint stood, ever watchful. His ears perked at the slightest sound of movement. Grace felt a lump form in her throat. The companionship of these two dogs had been a lifeline for her. They had helped her rebuild her life when she thought it was all falling apart. They had pulled her out of the darkness, with their loyalty and gentle nature, never once asking for more than what they gave. For a moment, Grace let herself absorb the warmth of their presence. Captain's steady gaze, Flint's playful energy, it was like a constant reminder that she wasn't alone, that the world could still offer moments of simple joy, if only she was willing to reach out and take them. She stood up, leaving the half-drunk coffee on the counter, and walked over to them. Kneeling down, she placed a hand on Captain's head and felt the soft fur beneath her fingers. The dog leaned into her touch, and she closed her eyes for a moment, allowing the comfort of the connection to wash over her. "You've been with me through so much, haven't you, old friend?" she whispered. "I don't know what I'd have done without you." Captain's tail wagged slowly, his eyes full of something almost like understanding. It was as if he knew what she hadn't yet been able to put into words. that the journey they had been on together was not just about survival. It was about rediscovery. But even with all the healing that had happened in this place, Grace still felt the tug of something unfinished. There was more to uncover, more to face. She was beginning to realize that healing wasn't a single, definitive event. It was a process. And just as she had learned to trust in the slow, patient rhythm of the ocean, she would need to trust in herself again. As they reached the cabin, Captain suddenly paused, his ears pricking up. Flint stopped beside him, both of them watching the path ahead with a focused intensity. "What is it, Captain?" Grace murmured. Her heart quickened as she followed the dog's gaze. Far down the path, at the edge of the trees, a figure was approaching. Grace squinted into the fading light, her pulse quickening with the uncertainty of the moment. She hadn't expected visitors, not this far out. But as the figure drew closer, Grace realized it was a person she hadn't seen in years. Her breath caught in her throat. It was Simon. Grace had always known that healing wasn't linear. It was messy, unpredictable, and sometimes it felt like taking one step forward only to stumble back again. But today felt different. Today, the weight of her past seemed lighter. The truth that she had buried for so long, about Simon, the betrayal, the pain, was slowly being unraveled, piece by piece. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the quiet Montana plains, Grace sat on the porch of her small cabin. Captain lay beside her, his head resting on her feet, while Flint was perched on the edge of the porch, his ears flicking at the slightest sound. Together, they created a cocoon of comfort around her. They were her safe haven in a world that had once felt so uncertain. But the phone call had changed everything. Simon, after all these years, he had found her. The anger and betrayal that had once burned so brightly in her heart had been extinguished over time, but the scars remained. And now, facing him once more, she wasn't sure if she was ready to confront the ghosts of her past. She ran her fingers through Captain's fur, the familiar motion grounding her. Flint trotted over, nudging her hand as if to remind her that she wasn't alone. "You're right," Grace whispered. "I'm not alone." The phone call had been brief, just enough for Simon to ask if he could meet her. He had tried to explain, tried to apologize for the way he had left her all those years ago. But Grace wasn't sure if apologies would ever be enough. Words could only go so far. What mattered now was the present, the life she had built, and the bond she had formed with her dogs. Captain lifted his head, as if sensing her unease. His eyes, filled with deep understanding, locked onto hers. He had always been her protector, her constant companion, the one who had never let her down. His presence was a reminder that she had the strength to face whatever came next. And then there was Flint, the quiet, steadfast presence who had been with her through every twist and turn of this journey. His loyalty, unwavering, his silent support priceless. He had been with her through the darkest times, the moments when she questioned everything, including herself. But Flint had never faltered. He had stayed by her side, reminding her of the importance of unconditional love. Grace knew, deep down, that her dogs were her true family. They had seen her at her lowest and had been there to lift her up. They had never judged her, never turned their backs on her, even when she felt like she was too broken to be loved. As the night air grew cooler, she stood up, feeling the pull of the land around her. The world was vast, the sky stretching endlessly above her. But for the first time in years, she didn't feel small. She felt like she belonged. She had built something real here, a home, a sanctuary, and she wasn't going to let it be shaken by the ghosts of her past. The next day, she drove into town, the familiar roads guiding her like a second skin. She had already made up her mind. She wasn't going to let Simon's return dictate her future. She had forgiven herself for what had happened all those years ago, and she had learned to trust again, in herself and in her dogs. But there was still one more step left to take. Grace parked the truck outside the small cafe where Simon had asked to meet. The place was quiet, its windows fogged with condensation from the warmth inside. She took a deep breath, steadying herself, before opening the door. As she stepped inside, the bell above the door jingled, and for a moment, She thought she might turn around and leave. But she didn't. There he was, sitting at a table by the window, his face older, his hair graying at the temples, but the eyes, those eyes, were the same. They had once held so much promise, so much love, and now they were filled with something else. Regret, maybe. Longing. "Grace," he said, his voice quiet but steady. She nodded but didn't sit down. She wasn't ready for that yet. "I know you're angry," Simon continued, his hands fidgeting with the edge of his cup. "I've spent years thinking about how I left, about the damage I caused. I wasn't the man you needed me to be." Grace didn't answer at first. Instead, she looked out the window, letting the moment sink in. She could feel Captain and Flint with her, their spirits beside her, urging her to stay true to herself. "Why now?" Grace finally asked, her voice calm but firm. "Why come back after all this time?" Simon sighed, his gaze dropping to the table. "Because I don't think I can live with the guilt anymore. I hurt you, Grace, and I never gave you a chance to heal. I wasn't there for you when you needed me the most." Her heart didn't race the way it used to when she thought of him, when she thought of the pain he had caused. There was a distance between them now, an emotional space that hadn't been there before. It was like she could finally breathe without him hovering over her every thought. "I've forgiven you," Grace said quietly, "but that doesn't mean I'm going to forget." Simon looked up, surprise in his eyes. "Grace, She raised a hand to stop him. "I'm not doing this for you, Simon. I'm doing this for me. I've built a life here. I found peace. And I don't need you to come back and mess that up." She turned toward the door, Captain's image flashing in her mind, his loyal eyes reminding her of the love that mattered most. The love she had fought for, the love that had healed her. "I have to go," she said softly. "Goodbye, Simon." And with that, she walked out of the cafe, feeling the weight of years lifting from her shoulders. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. The world felt vast, but it also felt small, like her place in it was secure, and nothing could take that away. Captain and Flint were waiting for her, as they always had been. Their silent support was all she needed. They had seen her through the worst of it. They had healed the broken parts of her heart. The road ahead was hers to walk now, and she would walk it with the two of them by her side. Grace stood at the edge of the porch, the night stretching out before her like a velvet canvas, a blanket of stars glittering above like a promise. The wind whispered softly through the pine trees, the kind of sound that made you feel like nature itself was speaking to your soul. There was something grounding in it, something that reminded her not just of where she had come from, but of the woman she had become. She could still hear the echoes of that last conversation with Simon. His voice, cracked with guilt, had carried all the weight of the years lost between them. But now those words didn't hold power over her. She had made peace, not just with Simon, but with the shadows of the life she once lived. Forgiveness had come, quietly, like spring thaw after a long winter. But forgiveness didn't always mean return. Sometimes it simply meant release. As she stood there with her dogs by her side, Grace felt the years fall away like leaves in the wind. There was no more bitterness, no more lingering ache, only the quiet strength of a woman who had walked through fire and come out the other side softer, not weaker. She had built a life carved in truth, loyalty, and love, not from another human, but from the two souls who had stood by her when the world had gone silent. Captain stretched out beside her, his head resting near her feet, his eyes reflecting the stars. He had been the anchor through the storms, steady and unyielding in his loyalty. Flint, ever observant and quiet, sat beside Captain, tail thumping gently against the porch with that rhythmic beat of comfort. They were more than companions. They were her family, chosen not by blood, but by devotion. A soft smile tugged at Grace's lips as she looked down at them. She wasn't alone. Not anymore. Not ever again. The months that followed were filled with moments she never would have imagined a year ago. She continued her work with the local animal rescue, a passion reignited by Captain and Flint's presence in her life. They became a team, inseparable, understood in silence. Every look, Every step beside her reminded her of the healing they had all done together. She hiked more, breathed deeper, slept with the windows open to let in the night sounds of Montana. The owls, the wind, the rustle of deer passing through. Her feet knew the trails now like memory. The land didn't just surround her. It lived inside her. One evening, after a long hike, Grace stood at the peak of a mountain, the sun melting into the horizon in a cascade of purples and golds. She closed her eyes and let the wind wrap around her like an old friend. There, at the top of the world, everything was still. Captain leaned into her side, and Flint sat just behind her, watching the changing sky. She rested her hand on Captain's head and whispered, "This is it. We're exactly where we need to be." And she believed it down to her bones. As weeks turned into months, Grace's life settled into a rhythm of quiet joy. Her days began with the soft shuffle of paws, the aroma of morning coffee, and the golden light spilling across her cabin floor. There was peace in the simplicity, love in the ordinary, and an unshakable sense of home in the eyes of her dogs. The ghosts of the past no longer haunted her. Simon, his betrayal, the years of self-doubt. They had faded into distant echoes, no longer sharp, no longer defining. Grace had learned that healing didn't mean forgetting. It meant no longer being owned by the pain. She had faced every shadow, and she had emerged full of light. One morning, she stood by the window, coffee in hand, watching Captain and Flint chase each other through the dew-covered field. Laughter rose in her chest, free, unguarded. The mountains loomed behind them, strong and silent, just like her. She wasn't afraid of what came next. The future was no longer something to run from. It was something to meet with open arms. With a quiet exhale, Grace turned off her phone, slipped on her boots, and stepped outside. Captain looked back at her with that familiar glint of devotion, and Flint gave a small bark as if to say, "Come on, we're waiting." She smiled, heart full, and walked toward the horizon with them. Every step a quiet declaration. "I am here. I have arrived. I am whole."